Hey, welcome back, everybody, to another episode with me, Richard, the host of the Shout Out Show. I'm glad people could make it back. I'm glad I'm on at least on a list of maybe things you want to check out, see. Please remember to your friends, family. If you're on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. If you're not on YouTube, just stick around today. As always, I want to start out by thanking the Most High for being able to do yet another show. All praise to Allah. And also, I want to thank the people that come back and support the Shout Out Show. I know you have things to do. It's not the greatest time in the world. It's 5 o'clock Central, 6 o'clock Eastern Time, and of course, it's 3 o'clock Pacific Time. But that hasn't stopped us. We've been able to have some pretty good dialogue over this month of Ramadan. And I'm proud to say that once Ramadan ends, we're going to be revamping the show because this has been really for the benefit of introducing people to my style, introducing them to the show. But I'm looking forward so much to expanding this and really making it something that we could all be proud of. Today's topic is interesting topic. And it's not interesting because, there's something magical about it, but it's interesting because it's nuanced over the years in terms of how we see it. We in the hood like to say something. Instead of saying you're all right or you feel all right, we used to say the word "you good." You good covers a lot of things. You good covers anything with a financial situation, all the way up to you having a major operation. We're gonna ask, you good. And I realized what the impetus of you good is. It's a curtail thing because I realized that when we ask somebody you good, it's a question that ties people together because health is so important. And when I say health is so important, up until like the last maybe 25 years, the idea of health, particularly in underserved communities, has been something that hasn't been that great a deal. When we would talk about health issues or health disparities, a lot of times with charities, we're talking about overseas, countries listed as third world. I don't like that term, but places like Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, Africa, who had traditionally been underserved. They weren't underserved, they were impoverished. Let's call that what that is. But I think the thing is, one thing that it's beginning to be talked about now, but I have to speak about it from a point where it wasn't talked about, if you don't mind. And that's the issue of self-care, the importance of self-care. Like, for example, Muslims around the world are fasting right now. And here's the significance of it. Umrah was canceled, Hajj was canceled, masjids are closed, but people are still fasting. What is the impetus of this fasting? It means that for all the things I just told you that are closed, there's still a need to nurture the spirit. So if you think about it, Ramadan is difficult. Ramadan probably could happen at an even worse time than right now when you're dealing with COVID-19, because COVID-19 affects immune systems. Ramadan, by the end of Ramadan, by the get to Saturday, everybody's immune system is going to be shot at some point in time because you're doing things that aren't natural. You're refraining from food, drink, physical activity. I mean, you're doing a lot of things. I mean, the only thing that's different this year is we weren't going to the mosque. However, we have maintained that tradition, which I'm proud of. But I think the idea is self-care. But the reason why I bring up, because Ramadan is like that. Ramadan is like spiritual self-care. Like, we can deal with not going to the mosque, but that closeness, that proximity that we want to feel to our Creator, that's never going to abate. We must have that. That's in a spiritual sense. But when I'm talking about outside of that, the advent or the progression of the need for self-care is really an interesting thing, because some people have equated it over the years with you're soft or you're not strong or something that it represents some type of defect. And it's beautiful that over years, that stigmatism has moved, away, but we really need to talk about self-care. Like, I'll give you a prime example. Two examples. My grandmother's sister, my great aunt Annie, for my whole existence of knowing her, she was bedridden. Like, she literally would wake up in the bed, go to the bed, go to the bathroom by the bed. I mean, it was that type of thing. I never really fully understood what her ailment was. I just knew whenever we went to go see Aunt Annie, she was not getting out of that bed. Okay, that was her whole world. Um, and it's interesting because during that time, her care, or per se, her personal care, was distributed amongst the family. So, self care for the family really revolved around making sure that she was okay and she had what she needed in terms of um, food, water, physical assistance, and companionship. When I think about it today, self care is interesting because we live in such different times. Like, the idea of the family, the nuclear family, is not as strong as it used to be because there's so many distractions that keep you from family. One of the things with self care back in the day was you didn't have the distractions. You had a sense of community that led people to say, outside of that brevity of "you good," they would say, "You all right? Do you need something?" It was a complete process. So, "You all right? Do you need something?" If they say no, let me know if you need something. "You good?" is like, okay, it's kind of flippant, but I'm bringing this up because the idea of self care has to be revisited. It must be revisited. And when I say revisit, I'm not saying we're changing anything, but I think it has a definite place right now, particularly during COVID-19, because you have people who are spending a lot of time with themselves with no distractions, meaning that the things we don't want to talk about ourselves or address about ourselves, we're in a room, we're in a house, something like that, for hours at a time. And we're also there with people who are going through the same thing a lot of times. So you have this, I want to say, emotional, social, spiritual combustibility in a house that you really can't overlook. And I have this story. A friend of mine, brother of mine, Azur's mine, gave me this story. It's not necessarily about self care, but it relates. If you allow me, the story goes that there was I guess a religious official, a cleric, who would go to this mosque, and he was renowned for having just beautiful pairs of shoes. Like, his shoes were amazing shoes. Like, they were amazing shoes. They were beautiful, and everybody would work on them. This one time he came out of prayer, the shoes were gone. Someone had jacked his shoes, and he's looking around. He sees a young man with a pair of his shoes on, with his shoes on, and he sees they make eye contact, and they take off running. And the sheikh is running after him. The young man is running. He looks back. The sheikh is getting closer. He looks back. The sheikh is getting closer. The sheikh finally gets close enough to him. He tackles him, and the young man puts his hands up to defend himself. He thinks he's getting beaten up. And the sheikh says, calm down, put your hands down. He said, let me explain to you what is going on. He says, the reason I tackled you is because if I let you run away with the shoes, you would be branded a thief. He said, I tackled you to stop you to make a gift of the shoes. Therefore, you and I get a blessing. You get a blessing of the shoes. I get a blessing of giving you the shoes. Now, the story goes a little bit deeper. The story goes also that the reason he also tackled him was the fact that on the day of judgment, Yom Kippur, when Prophet Muhammad prays for our intercession in heaven, he doesn't want the prophet to be tied up making a dua about stolen shoes. Classic understanding. I love it. I love it. What's going on, big sis? How are you? Now, let me rewind the goodness in that thing about running after things. In life, we talked about toxicity yesterday. In life, a lot of times we're running after people. We're running after people. We're running after things that aren't necessarily healthy. They're not necessarily helpful. There's really no return or investment for these things. And we run into people and adventures like that. And I found that one of the discerning things about self-care is you must have an established system of how you evaluate things, how you put value on things. I talk about my Aunt Annie, but I really haven't talked about my own mother. My mother, God bless her, she's still here. Mom, keep that door closed. Don't leave with this COVID-19. My mom has had a lot of health problems. For those of you who know me, know that I dote over my mom. Here's an interesting thing about my mom. I was talking about my Aunt Annie. When my mom was younger, she had a car accident. She was backing out. Somebody hit her. She got whiplash. She had major back damage. And I remember as a child having to take care of my mom. This is when they didn't have electric heating pads back then. They would give you these big things. They were almost like sandbags, and you would have to put them in water, like big pans of water, and then you would have to take them out, and you have to put them in a towel and put her on her back, and you would have to repeat that over and over. And that's one of my first memories of when my mother wasn't physically well. Um, I asked her sometime later, I said, did that help? She goes, well, it didn't really help my back. She said, it helped my spirit. She said, it helped my spirit. And I said, how so? She goes, knowing that there's love in the house, that there was some kind of love in the house in my situation. She goes, it made me feel better when I didn't actually feel as good as I thought I did. You know, self-care, peace, Brother Earth, all the way from Sydney. Self-care is interesting because we kind of think of it as, a lot of us think of it as, okay, I got to feel better. I must feel better. Self-care is a little bit more nuanced. It means establishing your environment. Because if you're just talking about I got to feel better, it's very episodic. You know, it's very like, okay, somebody said something to me. I'm tired. I'm sick. No, let's get out of that thing. Self-care has to do with establishing an environment that's healthy for you, a spiritual, emotional, social ecosystem that you can go to. And even when things are not well, that environment's still there. It's still there for you. It has a lot to do with what you acquire. In Arabic, they have a word called kasb, which has to do with acquisition. And I think that self-care has to do with so many things about what we acquire in our environments, how we frame success, how we frame health. You know, I sent out a thing to my brother, JT, and it was a picture of me from 1993 on stage doing comedy at the Comedy Cafe in Milwaukee with a kufi on. Now, a lot of you guys think that Muslim comedy started in 2004 with Allah being funny. No, it did not. It started in 1992 in Milwaukee, going up and making a case that I was a Muslim. And it was interesting because in this article, the guy, his name was Dave Tiana, it was for the Milwaukee Sentinel. He framed in an article what it was that allowed me to do comedy. But when I looked at it, I said, it's what it was that allowed me to have self-care dealing with the entertainment business. And I'm going to employ everybody to do a checklist. Do a checklist of things in your space that lead to self-care, whether it's rest, whether it's engagement. I know sometimes when I get stressed out, I'm not going to lie, I'll get a Snapple and I'll watch a couple episodes of Sanford and Son and all is right in the world. Okay, now everybody's not going to do that. I understand that we are these are challenging times, but these are times that present opportunity. I've talked about this before. You know, sometimes in stressful times, you find that key, you find that ethic, if you will, that's going to allow you to move forward in all the other situations. I had a recent epiphany that gave me a bit of self-care in terms of my creative self. I had to write a paper for a class. It was called Quran Collection, Composition, and Teaching. And I don't know why I dreaded this class. I don't know why. I thought I was going to get a bad grade. Or maybe the teacher was intimidating. I don't know. I didn't put my best foot forward. And also, to be fair to myself, I was sick. I was really sick. I had the precursor to, I believe, COVID-19. Then eventually I had COVID-19. But I wrote this paper, and it was a challenging paper. Number one, because I didn't want to do it. And number two is like, I don't want to go through something and put my heart and soul in it and get a bad grade. Let's just call it what it is. And something clicked where creatively I was in a whole nother place. and I was writing free, and the concepts were coming, and it had this crazy title. This crazy title. If anybody wants the paper, I'll send it to you. The title was called "Love of Silence: The Power of Quranic Consonants," which is a musical term, but it brought me so much joy. And plus the fact I believe that the word consonants, my teacher had to go look it up. So there you go. But my point is, what are the things that not just give you joy, but generate joy? Because I believe that self-care is so important, not just for you, but the people around you. And if you think about it, it's connecting environments together. Connecting environments together. If you look at the scope of any prophet that's come to the United States, not the United States, I almost said, sorry. All right. Revealed to mankind. I'm stuck in the United States, so forgive me. They had the unique quality of developing community based around self-care. When I say based around self-care, I mean self-care of a community. Religious identity has so much to do with being able to connect with people who have core values like you, but share them in a caring way, share them in an unselfish way. One of the best components of self-care, and this is a throwback to my mentor, Reginald Kinji, says, early in life, you have to develop what's called positive selfish self-interest. That's positive selfish self-interest. For he and I, it was working with children. When I say working with children, I mean education beyond the classroom or education beyond the basketball court. It was the ability to, not the ability, it was the desire to effectively and positively change the trajectory of children's lives. I wish I put this article on you, but that's it. Because I said one of the best things about comedy was being able to speak to issues in the community. This is 1993. All That Made Me Funny doesn't start till 2004. So I'm already on this pace, if you will. But I realized that you can develop aspects of self-care, and it's not self-care, it's selfless care. It's not self-care, it's selfless care, which means I could look at that person, not necessarily know them, but have a love and concern and compassion because I want to see them better. There's a thing coming up on Eid with the Zakat Foundation. And also, if anybody can, I'm still trying to raise money for my Muslim Aid campaign to feed our children. The people who have done it, I shouted them out, but please go to launchgood.com/Preacher Moss. I want to give a shout out to this brother right here. This guy right here is a community guy. Sam is a community guy. I mean, we talking about going out sacrifice. I mean, day and day, he's a grinder. He's a grinder. He's a guy that believes that no child should go to bed hungry, and I've seen him do it. Okay, and that's a great example of you have self-care, but selfless care. Okay, I almost lost my place. We were talking. I was talking about a program I did just recently. It's coming out on the Zakat Foundation, all that type of stuff, and it was interesting. With a group of comedians, well-established comedians, all of our stories hinged and built upon care for one another. Now, we may have differences or differences of opinions or fallouts, but every story starts with selfless care. Selfless care. I remember a comedian we bought on, Muhammad Ahmed. He's doing great things now. And when he talked about wanting to join Allah Made Me Funny, I was listening to him like we all listened to him. And it was interesting what he said to me. He said, listen, I want to be a part of Allah Made Me Funny because I want to get closer to Allah. And I was like, wow, that's deep. But let me explain to you, even outside of that, in my family, I've always been proud of my family because, we can be crazy, we can be nutty, all of that. But I remember two very vivid stories. One is the story of my grandmother, who lived to be in her 90s. She died from dementia and Alzheimer's. But I always say that I was proud of my family because they rallied around her so that she never was in a nursing home. And it's the same thing for my Aunt Georgia May. Aunt May, I call her, but it's Georgia Moss Foster. But even with that situation, the ability to go see her and know that she was surrounded by love and care in her own house is interesting because we could all be selfish. Let's admit to it. We could all be selfish, but it's amazing the miracle that you can stop and pump your brakes and go, you know what? I can do this. And that whole thing of self care is me, 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 me. No, it is establishing things in your environment that benefit you, but it's also establishing things in the environment when needed that can benefit other people. So I'm going to ask everybody to reconstruct this whole dichotomy, this whole paradigm of self-care, to be inclusive of the fact that a lot of the things outside of it do benefit us. We all have, at some point in time, developed positive selfish self-interest, whether it's in dealing with our family, whether it's in dealing with our children, dealing with our friends. It's there. And I think we should all be celebratory, if you will. We should be celebratory, if you will, in saying, you know what, it's okay. Like, we appreciate these things. Like, there are people who've done things for me, man. And I think the beautiful part is, thank you, brother. I appreciate it. I think the interesting thing was they never told me. Like, you find out later. You know, I remember I was in Iowa. I think it was Cedar Rapids, Iowa. And this is the old days of comedy. A lot of young comedians don't know what it is to go on a week run and do these one-nighters. They're horrible. And essentially, I'm in Cedar Rapids. What happens is I didn't get the money I was supposed to get. I had to go to the next town. The show didn't go well. The guy didn't pay me. I actually took off. Just call it what it is. And I had done a show in Cedar Rapids sometime before, maybe 6 or 7 months before. And I'm sitting here trying to, when you're broke, you will read the price of every item on there and figure out the tax. That's when you know you're broke. When you have to go, waitress, what is the sales tax here in Iowa? Because you're going to add that in because you want to make sure your money lines up. And while I was doing that, the cook looked out. He saw me. He goes, "Hey, man, you did the thing." And I'm like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm back in town if you want to come out." And we had met that way. "Hey, man, if you want to come out, bring a couple friends, cool." The guy remembered. And when it came time to leave, and believe me, they didn't even have calculators back then. You didn't even have cell phones. So this is how bad it looks, me figuring out how much I owe. I literally got a pen and paper, and I'm writing down everything I ordered and the sales tax. I couldn't even play it off on a cell phone, people. I'm writing it down. I'm carrying the one. You know what I'm saying? I think it came out to back then. It was like, I don't know, like $11.50 something, like $12.52, something like that. And I had like $12.60. And you don't want to count out every piece of change, but I was about to. And I get up here, and the lady goes, "You're all right." And I'm like, "Well, you don't know me, but you're all right too." And she goes, "No, you don't have a bill." I'm like, "Lady, I had a bill. I'm in Iowa. I'm black by myself. This could go really, really wrong. What are you talking about?" And the lady said, "No, your bill has been taken care of." And I'm looking around, and the guy was still in the back cooking, and he goes, "Gotcha." And I remember that because somewhere in this guy's space, he had a lot of things to do. He's over a hot grill. He's cooking. But he remembered what was something general. I don't even think about it. Maybe to him it's a real act of kindness, but somehow he took it and he made it a part of his environment, his self-care, whereby it can be inclusive of other things and other people who are in need. And I remember that feeling, man. That feeling, because it connected with me in a way whereby my self-care was tied into the fact that I realized at this certain point in time that he didn't really know me, but he cared enough. So as a closeout, I'm going to ask everybody to reevaluate a little bit. Look into your room of self-care, move the sofa out of the way, maybe the bed out of the way, rearrange a few things, and allow your mode of self-care. While it's very important, it's inclusive of you, you're taking care of your mental health, spiritual health, financial health, all of those things, that it includes the ability to help other people. because that is the thing about self-care. There's self, and then there's care in general. Brothers and sisters, I had a great time talking about self-care. I didn't know if it was even going to go this way because it's so hard to explain things to folks in this format. But I've had great teachers, people in the queue. I want to thank you for coming because you guys don't really understand how much you guys spur me on and inspiration. I'll be honest, man. We talk about self-care. I've felt horrible since yesterday. Headaches, backache, I mean, a whole nine. I felt, what am I, 53? I felt 103. But just getting motivated, knowing that, inshallah, some things that I'm saying may be a benefit to other people. You know what, man? It makes you put on your pants a certain way. As my grandfather said, put on them pants, get to work. It makes you feel a certain way. And I think to close, and I don't want to go too long, I mean, it's just the beauty of being able, number one, to have this life to care about, but also to be identified with people as valuable, as having valuable, and we have value together. So, brothers and sisters, look, the title was called You Good. I'm not going to say you good. I'm not going to say you good. I'm going to ask you, how are you? Are you all right? If you do, you need anything? If you don't, if you do, let me know. So get out of the you good. Ask a question. Wait for an answer. You all right? You need anything? If you do, let me know. We'll be back next week. This is Preacher Moss on the Shout Out Show. You guys have been terrific. We'll see you soon as we power through these last days of Ramadan. I am proud of you, and I'm just saying, listen, whatever's going on in life, you got two choices. You get bitter or you get better. Let's get better. My name is Preacher Moss. Shout Out Show. See you tomorrow. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'm out.